Under the heavy shadows of a Latin sky, Patriot Force stood at the edge of calamity. The Montrose nuclear power plant loomed like a fallen colossus, its crippled silhouette of omen of unseen terror that whispered through the air. Walter Hammond, with his grave countenance and weary eyes, was painting a grim picture of an invisible enemy they faced. Radiation levels are off the charts, Hammond declared, gesturing to the desolate landscape before them. The contamination zone extends for miles, a silent killer as lethal as any bomb breached that perimeter, and you are signing your own death warrant. Zach's Grace didn't waver the smoking ruins. He could almost hear the ghostly echoes of sirens and could envision the chaos that reigned when the plant succumbs to its engineered fate. He felt the unsettling caress of radiation against the protective shell of his resolve. Harmon, I understand the risk, Zach said, his voice carrying the weight of his conviction, but there's a bigger picture here. Someone wanted this to happen. We need to know why and how they did it. Riley, standing by his side, fixed with his steely gaze, the tightness of her mouth hinting at her disapproval. Zach, is a suicide mission. Think about what you're walking into. This is not just another case. We're talking about radioactive fallout. Despite the warning lacing her words, Zach's mind was already infiltrating the dead zone, combing through the wreckage for clues. Riley, I have to do this. There could be evidence in there, something everyone else has missed. Zach's tone broke her, no argument. It was the voice of a man who walked through the fire and emerged with only the burns to show for it. She exhaled a long, resigned breath that seemed to acknowledge the fertility of arguing with him. Fine, she conceded, the symbol sharp as a knife edge. But if you think for 1 second that I'm going to let you go in alone, you're crazier than I thought. And Zach, if it gets too dangerous, I'm dragging you out of it. Even if I have to knock you unconscious and carry you myself. Thanks, Riley, Zach said, allowing himself a brief smile that barely touched his eyes. Let hope it doesn't come to that. If you really insist on throwing your lives away, Hammond said, really, let me at least give you something to wear. He gestured to them, and they followed him into the dead of a nearby mobile command unit. At the back of the unit was a small room filled with Geiger counters, suits, and other radioaction-related tools. Suit up, Hammond instructed. Your Geiger counters will be your lifeline. Keep an eye on them, Zach nodded, stepping into the room lined with bulky hazmat gear hanging like dormant sedatives. The suits, garnished yellow, were a stark contrast to the sterile white of the walls. He hoisted one from his hook, feeling the weight settle in his hands, a tangible reminder of peril they were about to wade into. As he stepped into the suit, the material crackled into a sound akin to distant thunder, and the world was muffled into a dull echo chamber. Check your seals twice, Riley said, her words slightly distorted through the mask. Her eyes, the only visible part of your face, met his with a mix of resolve and concern. Always do, Zach replied, running his gloved fingers over the seams, ensuring no entry point for the invisible killer they were about to confront. He snapped the visor into place with a click that resonated like the chambering of a bullet. Remember, Harmon interjected, handing them the Geiger counters. If those numbers climb too high, you get out. No heroics. Understood, Zach said. He glanced at Riley, who gave him a subtle nod, and then they headed out. The ghostly remains of the Montrose nuclear power plant loomed ahead, a skeleton silhouette against the gray sky. Smoke curled lazily from fixture in the ruins, a serpent's dance that hypnotized with its silent warning. Look at this place. Riley's voice crackled over the radio, a thin thread of all woven with dread. Keep your focus on the reading, Jack reminded her, although his own gaze was riveted to a apocalyptic scene. The plant, once a beacon of energy and progress, now stood as a testament to destruction. In his mind's eye, the facility was whole again, bustling with workers moving with purpose, unaware that their world was about to shatter. Now it was as if the earth had opened its maw and devoured all life, leaving behind only this scared ruin. The Geiger counter clipped to his belt, ticked steadily, a morbid metronome, marking time in a place where time itself seemed to hold its breath. Zach, what are you or we actually searching for? Riley asked. Zach paused and turned to face him, his eyes bearing the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. I wish I knew exactly, he admitted. He breathed, fogging up his visor momentarily. I'm hoping we'll know it when we see it. Riley nodded, her posture rigid with determination beneath bulky gear. As they moved forward, Zach's mind analyzed each detail of the wreckage. His father had taught him that every piece of a puzzle mattered, and it was the small, overlooked fragments that often held the key to unraveling the grand scheme. It wasn't just about protecting the here and now. It was about peeling back the layers of dissent to reveal the truth, to prevent future attempts on the nation's safety. Radiation levels was creeping up. Riley warned, breaking into his thought. The Geiger counter's rhythm was growing more erratic. We're okay for now, he replied, his tone steerly. But keep tracking the reading. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were close, that the answers were hidden somewhere within these charmed remains. The thoughts were both a beacon of a torment, driving him deeper into the contamination zone. Maybe this was a mistake, Riley muttered, her concern evident even though the distortion of the hazmat suit intercom. We're not finding anything. Is that just increasing risk? He understood her worry. Time was a luxury they didn't have in the irradiated graveyard. But his instinct told him there was something here, something vital that they were missing. Let's press a little longer, he insists. There was a stubborn streak in him, one that refused to yield in the face of adversity. It was that same intensity that had seen him through the darkness of times, and it surged within him now, pushing him onward. They moved through his ruins, the silent punctuation only by the occasional groan of settling debris and the relentless ticking of their Geiger counters. With each passing moments, the atmosphere grew heavier, the weight of potential failure pressing down on Zach. We should head back, Riley said, her voice muffled behind her mask. We're not finding anything. We can't give up now. It's too important. More important than our lives. Zach, you know as well as I do the danger of radiation poisoning. We're pushing our limits, especially given the fact that this is our second time here today. Zach ground his teeth. He wanted to ignore her or tell her she was wrong, but he knew she was right. This was getting far too dangerous. Still, could he really go back empty-handed? That was when he saw it, a hint of leather poking out from beneath a pile of twisted metals and broken concrete, a boot. His heart clenched as a flash of memory, bright and searching as the radioactive materials around him pierced his mind. Once, during his time in Afghanistan, his unit had been ambushed, and a friend of his, Jacob Lockett, had been buried beneath a pile of rubber after an RPG struck the upper half of a building he was standing beside. As the firefighting intensified, Zach had tried to locate Jake, but he'd been unable to do so before he was forced to withdraw along with the rest of his unit. That was a failure he did not intend to repeat ever again. Riley, there's someone here, Zach said as he approached the rubble, his Geiger counter clicking frantically in his hand. Riley's protest was immediately, Zach, no, the readings are spiking. It's too dangerous. Ignoring her warning, Zach fell to his knees and began tearing at the debris, the protective gloves hindering his dexterity. Each stone removed brought him closer to redemption or madness. He wasn't sure which. Dust filled the air, coating his visor, but he couldn't stop. Help me get him out, Zach gasped between breaths, the past blurring with the present, the soldier's booty merging with that of the bodies tapped under the ruins of the plant. It was getting more and more difficult to breathe, not just because he was over-exerting himself either. He felt like he was pulling air through a straw. Zach, think about what you're doing. We can't help anyone if we're dead. Riley's voice was a thread of sanity in the chaos, but the pull of duty was stronger. This time he wouldn't leave a man behind. Can't do that, Zach said, his muscle protecting as he heaved a large piece of concrete aside. This is on me, Riley. Just keep an eye on those counters for me. Sweat dripped down from his forehead, stinging his eyes underneath the mask as he worked with each movement. He felt the echo of that long ago day, heard the whispered regrets that had haunted his nights. He could not, let history repeat itself. For his country, for himself, he had to see this through. Zach's hands were trembling, but it wasn't only for the exertion. The Geiger counter clicked to his suit was chirping distressingly. The ominous tick, 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 accelerating like the heartbeat of a frightening animal. He could feel the invisible threat all around him, the toxic legacy of human error underlined by malice. But there was a body under his wreckage. Someone had been a man with dreams and fears, and now he was nothing more than a silent witness to catastrophe. Radiation levels are still climbing, Zach, Riley said, alarmed. We're getting into the red zone. Almost there, he replied, his voice hoarse as he knelt beside the potentially uncovered form. The petrus that entombed the victim, a twisted mask of concrete, plastic, and unidentifiable debris, had become a less daunting after relentless minutes of digging. With one final heave, Zach cleared the last large obstruction, revealing the body fully. It was the heavy-set man dressed in what once must have been the uniform of a plant worker, now charred and ragged. Zach was already feeling lightheaded as he slid his arms under the corpse. He paused, taking a moment to catch his breath. Zach, look at this, Riley called out. Her flashlight beam settled on the panel on the wall. The panel door stood open, and inside, amidst the tangle of wires, hung the broken remains of a small handheld device, little more than a piece of cracked plastic attached to a few circuit boards. Don't think this belongs here, Riley murmured, pulling the device free and turning it over in her gloved hands. Could be something used by the saboteurs. Grab it and let's move, Zach ordered. Zach's muscle burned with a fiery intensity as he hoisted the heavy body over his shoulder. His vision went black for a moment, then cleared as he trudged forward, his boot sinking slightly into the ash-covered ground. He told himself he was fine. It was just the fear of radiation that was getting to him. He could power through it as he always did. Let me help you with him, Riley said. Zach, you don't have to. I've got it, he said. As they moved away from the contamination zone, the smoking ruins began to fade into the backdrop, replaced by the increasingly familiar landscape of emergency vehicles and frenzy activities. Suddenly, Zach's vision started to blur at the edges again. the world tilting ever so slightly with each elaborate breath. Why was it so difficult to breathe? Was it just his imagination, or was something wrong with the suit? Zach, your vitals are spiking, Riley said. Your voice now sharp with anxiety. You need to slow down before. The ground seemed to lurch beneath him, and Zach's heart hammered against his ribcage. A dizzy spell washed over him, a roll wave threatening to drag him under. He stumbled, the dead man's weight becoming an anchor, and his vision swarmed with images of past battles, of faces lost and lives sacrificed. He fought against it, clenching his teeth to stave off the nausea that clawed at his insides. Damn it, Zach, Riley cried. The world spun, colors bleeding together into a maelstrom of disorientation with the Herculean effort. He planted one foot in front of the other, determined not to succumb. That the strength that had always been his fortress now crumbled like the walls of a breached citadel. Zach's knees buckled and he collapsed to the ground, the body rolling off his shoulder as darkness rushed in to claim him.